You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is brought to you by Peach State Payments. Ethical processing, more profit, less stress. Chiro HD, more than an EHR. Practice management simplified. The Chiro Speaking Company. Attract, educate, and convert. Chiro Spring, cloud-based, user-friendly software with all the essential features chiropractors need. Rudman Relight. The IFCO. Chiro Moguls. Chiro Health USA. Sherman College of Chiropractic. Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, and Life West College of Chiropractic. Let's hustle. This episode of Chiro Hustle is brought to you by Relight Hydration by Redmond. Here's the truth. Most Americans are walking around dehydrated, low energy, brain fog, muscle cramps, headaches, and they think they need more caffeine, when what they actually need are electrolytes. Hydration isn't just water. It's sodium, potassium, and trace minerals that help your body actually absorb and use the water. That's where Relight comes in. Made with Redmond real salt. No artificial junk, no neon dyes, no sugar overload, just clean, balanced electrolytes designed to support hydration, muscle function, and optimal daily performance. And here's the best part. Grab their sample pack with multiple flavors so you can find your favorite. Once you dial it in, it's an easy daily habit you'll stick with for life. Chiropractors understand this. The nervous system runs on electrical signals. Electrolytes help support that communication. If you're tired or feeling drained by 2 p.m., this is your upgrade. Go to chirohustle.com and get 25% off Relight with our exclusive promo. If you want a wholesale Redmond products, see the show notes for the wholesale application. Hydrate smarter, perform better, stay aligned.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 772 of the Chiro Hustle Podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Ethan Feldman. And if you want to hear a conversation that spans a career from California to Mexico, stay tuned for the full episode. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle Podcast. Today I have Dr. Ethan Feldman coming on with me. Before we get into his story and this conversation today about chiropractic and the adjustments and the philosophy of the profession and keeping the body healthy long-term as a practitioner, I want to let you know our big why. Why do we do what we do at Chiro Hustle? Well, first things first is we definitely believe in freedom of speech, and we believe in medical freedom and family health freedom. Those are all fundamentals for why we do what we do. And then we'll get a bit more philosophical. We do protect BJ Palmer Sacred Trust. If you don't know what that is, go to chirohustle.com, check out the show notes, and click on BJ Palmer Sacred Trust. You'll learn more about chiropractic than you did previously, I guarantee you. I don't care if you've been practicing for 30 plus years. Fall back in love with the profession and learn more about it. We do also get a bit more deep about the education of philosophy. We believe that we have to support subluxation-based chiropractic because a lot of people are selling it out and they don't stay true to the roots of this profession. So if you know a chiropractic student or a new grad that needs the truth of chiropractic, please share the show with them. And furthermore, talking about subluxation-based chiropractic, we believe in innate intelligence, universal intelligence, and educated intelligence. We believe that when man or woman, the physical, gets adjusted, it connects them to man or woman, the spiritual. That might sound woo-woo, but if you need to know more about that stuff, go crack open Stevenson's textbook and learn more about the green books and the philosophy of this beautiful profession. And maybe you'll just go watch The Valley of the Blind it's Reggie Gold's YouTube clip, and maybe listen to a live transmission of Elysium from BJ Palmer back from the 50s. But with that being said, we appreciate every single one of you guys that like, share, and comment and have questions for us, and go over to chirohustle.com and become members of our community. And Dr. Ethan, you're episode 772. Welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Honored to be here. Thank you. Yeah,
it was really interesting having the offline conversation with you about identity and who we are and how people see us and how they see the chiropractic profession. And I think there's a lot of clarity in that, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that I looked it up. how many people trust MDs, physical therapists, and chiropractors. And unfortunately, we are not on the top. And there are reasons that I think a lot of people are afraid of chiropractic. And once you experience the chiropractic adjustment, or when the skilled chiropractic adjustment, that goes away. But still, there's a lot of people that aren't seeing us, and they should, because they have some preconception. It's like maybe they've never even met a chiropractor. When I decided I was going to become a chiropractor and I announced it to my parents, they were like, what? But I knew, and I didn't really even know. I just knew that, well, if I was a physical therapist and went out to physical therapy school, I'd have to do what the doctor said. And I know I'm not going to get along with that. So this is a doctorate. I get to diagnose and treat like I want. And so I just went to school thinking I was going to become like, how people get out of pain. But fortunately, I went to Life West. And Jerry Klum, who is such a, he was a hero to me. He really, by the time I left school, I was going, I'm not just a pain doctor. I am somebody who releases the life force in people so that miracles can happen in their body. And I got to see them. And anyway, it's been a long road, but I was a very successful chiropractor in Berkeley, California before I retired here, or was retired out due to injury, and moved here to Mexico. And I used to say I had a busy day, but look at all these cars that are going by, and they're not stopping. And I know that that person and that person and that person needs to see me. And they're not, because they don't know, or they're afraid. So after I got injured, I ended up going, I still want to adjust people. I still love chiropractic. How can I do this in a way where I'm not pushing hard with my left elbow now, which is almost bone on bone from a million thrusts and more than 3 or 4 bad sprains. And my left wrist is, a little wonky too. I've got a what's it called? Triangular fibrocartilage tear there from doing. So I started going into the ergonomics of chiropractic. How can we adjust ergonomically? And started teaching that. Then I learned how to, based on the fact that once a massage therapist came in and gave me a bodywork session, she says, oh, this is orthobiotomy. I'm pushing the bone further out of place. And to me, that made absolutely no sense. But sure enough, she released whatever was going on in my mid back, and she said, oh, it's an osteopathic technique. It's called strain counter strain. So I was in Life West bookstore years and years and years ago, and I saw that book. And I picked it up and put it on my bookshelf for 5 or 10 years. But once I was injured, I started peeling through it. And Lawrence Jones said he noticed by accident, basically he'd been working on this one patient for 6 weeks who had been to 3 chiropractors, had been in terrible pain and twisted over for 4 months, and showed up in his office, and he was doing all the standard Syriacs type manipulations, and nothing was working, ice, heat, whatever. So this young man said, Doc, if I could just sleep at night, that I can only rest for 10 or 15 minutes before I have to turn. And I wake up, I just can't, but if I could find a comfortable place to sleep. So he put aside all thoughts of treating the guy, and he said, let's just try to find you a comfortable position. And he put him he ended up in a twisted position with a bunch of pillows on the treatment table. And then just until another patient comes in, you know the story? And he said, I got to see this patient. I'll be back in 20 minutes. When he came back, the guy was fast asleep. And when he peeled away the pillows, he stood up straight for the first time in 4 months. So he did not know what he did. He was not treating the patient. But what he did was something that allowed the body to untangle itself. So I started going down this rabbit hole, and I learned strain counter strain, and I started teaching it to chiropractors. And they almost always said, "This is a great technique. I don't have time for it. I don't have time to sit there for 2 minutes while the whole thing untangles." So I went back to the neurophysiological basis of what holds the subluxation in place, and it's the muscle spindle. The muscle spindle gets this fake idea. It's afraid, and it shrinks up, and it holds the muscle in a tightened space. And what Jones realized that he did is if he just brought the muscle spindle further together, eventually it would figure it out and it would reset itself. And what I noticed from looking and reading at the text, that there were other things that would actually cause a muscle to relax further, primarily the Golgi tendon organs. When we're in school, well, Golgi tendon organs, they're the things that are in every tendon, and they report tension. And so when they feel a lot of tension, they send a signal to the muscle spindle to relax and reset. So I started putting two and two together. And I would put the muscle, let's say it was a bicep thing, or I would put the bicep into flexion. And so the muscle was not tender anymore, where the muscle spindles were setting off tender warning signals. And then I would tug on the tendon, and things would just go. So I was now able to just put the body into a state where it's not an alarm. And instead of thrusting through it, I just tugged on the tendons, and the motion restored and the tone restored. And so that's the basis of what I discovered and what I want to share.
Well, listening to you, it makes me think a lot about this conversation I recently had with Donnie Epstein. And he told me that the spine is an organ of consciousness. And once he told me that, it really reframed the way I thought about everything. And then I started to really understand, like you're talking about this patient sleeping. And as I started to think more and more about this consciousness of the organs and this consciousness of the nervous system, this consciousness of the spine, well, the subconscious is what turns on when we go into our sleep patterns. And our body goes into that rest and digest. And you can really tell somebody's nervous system of how that's actually working is how well they rest. And if you were to just hypothetically put a video camera on yourself while you're sleeping for 6 to 8 hours and you watch that footage, it'd probably terrify most people that that's their natural state when they're recovering. And when their organ of consciousness is actually at its rest and repair stage, most people would be like, wow, I need to really work on becoming a better sleeper. And really, the reason most people don't have good sleep is because their nervous system is not in homeostasis. It's in this fight or flight. And that's why when you were telling me earlier about when you were doing spinal screenings, you would do motion palpation with people and you would find the spot that was stuck. Well, that's a subluxation. And that's really the life work of most chiropractors is the Gonstead method. Even if you don't practice Gonstead, you find it, you fix it, you leave it alone, and you allow the body to heal naturally, adding nothing extra into it, simply removing the interference, which is more philosophy that was foundational by BJ Palmer. So when people think about, the body as a healing, what it needs, most people don't know what it needs because they don't investigate it deep enough. Like you're saying, chiropractors were shied away from your technique because it takes more time. Well, it's our greatest resource in the world. And if we don't give things our time, then we're not going to get the results that we desire.
Right. Now, time for us is not necessarily the same as time for a muscle spindle. It's as if, it's as if that every single subluxation is a little bit of consciousness that says, I don't feel safe right now. Okay. And it's our job as a chiropractor to decide whether it is safe or not. I mean, let's say somebody comes in with a very recent acute injury. It may not be the time to do an adjustment because it needs to rest, ice, compress, and elevate for 3 days. It's not, but we're the people who decide that. Whereas most subluxations are chronic old traumas that the body hasn't learned it's okay to release. And so we can go in there and we can deliver a thrust with our hands or with an instrument or with a drop table or whatever. But basically, we're doing this heroics of pushing it back. We're saying, I know where you need to go, ready or not, here you come. And then the body goes, oh, wow, that's great. What just happened? I know I feel great. What just happened? So that doesn't happen in nature. But, when I was in chiropractic school, I had a classmate who was a diehard Gonstead guy, really had good hands. And he said, only a chiropractor can get rid of a subluxation. And I'm always the person who questions these things like, well, okay, we identify subluxations and we remove them. And that's true. But if it didn't have that name, what would nature call it and what would nature do? And so every animal, every mammal you've seen, your dog comes home and he's limping. So what does he do? He lies down for 3 days. He curls up in the weirdest position with his paw in this funny little thing that's comfortable only to him, but it's not neutral. His neck might be like that. That's where the body is saying, this is where I feel safe, over here. And he doesn't argue the point. So what I do as a technique is I say, okay, I'm just going to respect nature. Back to that conversation about schizophrenics. You can tell schizophrenics that the voices aren't real. It's not going to work. But if you say, oh, what are they saying? Oh, what are they saying? Yeah. Are they really saying that? Okay, well, all right. Well, that sounds like that must be hard. That patient becomes more trusting, right? So the same thing is true with our subluxation's false perception that it needs to hold and protect us. And so we just bring it to a point by bringing the muscle. In this case, in the spine, it's they're usually the multifidi rotators. They're deep muscles in the spine. We bring them together, and then when they feel safe, I can do a little signal with a tendon or a little mobilization for maybe a few seconds, 20 seconds or so, and it erases it. And that's more how nature does it when there's no chiropractor around, is by, nature doesn't worry about whether it takes a minute and a half or 2 minutes or 10 minutes to be in a certain position. It just likes the position. But we're in a hurry, so we can use the language that our neurophysiology, our nerve tracts understand, to signal the spinal cord to let go. It's okay. There's no alarm. It's safe. You can let go now. And it doesn't. So that can be incorporated. And what's great is, I injured my elbow adjusting big guys in side posture on their sacroiliac joints. And, after a million adjustments, it wore out. With this kind of technique, you can still do side postures, but they just go like butter. It's nice and easy. It's a way to, so I still osseously adjust when I need to. I just did one, it's like, okay, all right, great. And it just goes.
So I know you sent me over some topics that you really wanted to discuss, and I want to make sure that we talk about a couple of them, but you're talking about the chiropractic adjustment. So I think this one's really fitting. And the question is, what do all chiropractic adjustments have in common? Viewing it from a scientific point of view.
Yeah. All of them have, whether it's Donnie Epstein's network or diversified Gonstead, what they all have in common is that they have too much, technically it's called gamma motor output. The spinal cord is sending too much grabbing energy to that particular muscle, and that restricts its motion. So that when I mean, if let's say somebody punched you in the bicep and then you tried to straighten it out, it would resist that. It says, I don't feel safe going that far. And it would keep you with a bent bicep. So, and you would feel more comfortable in this position. So, it's that kind of situation where the, the muscle spindle is set by, it's almost like it's being given too much voltage or amplitude, and you need to take down the volume of the information that's going in there. And so that can be done in a variety of ways. Now, if you're a tonal chiropractor like Donnie Epstein, you work on the vagal tone and get the body resting more and more in parasympathetics so that these things settle down. If you're a motion palpation guy, you just go straight for the, it's on this bone. This is the most stuck bone. Therefore, it's the primary one. That's what I'm going to move. But they all have that in common, and they all have what in common, the fact that they will de-escalate, they will down-regulate, they will reset themselves when they feel safe.
Well, I look at what you're discussing with me today is it's the healing art of chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the point of entry for somebody that gets into chiropractic as their first or second experiences is they don't understand that chiropractors are healing art. That's their skill, is the adjustment. Right. That's how you come from a dancing background, you were saying earlier. And right. There's a technique when it comes to a certain dance and a certain step that you use. And people can identify that once they see that as a certain style. And that's a part where most people don't understand the profession of chiropractic is chiropractors adjust, and that's their technique, and that's their art, and that's their style, which I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the profession is the application and the analysis and, the hardcore philosophical people that I talk to, they're like, it's not the adjustment, it's the analysis. And I think if people understood that a little bit better, that it's the analysis that you're talking about with the spindle of the spine and the tension in the ligaments and the tension in the tendons and the tensions in the muscle bellies. Like it's so much more the analysis rather than the force of the adjustment or the art of the practitioner. And if the chiropractor got really talented at the analysis, then the adjustment wouldn't take such a toll on the practitioner's body, which is really the sing and song of the dance of philosophy for longevity. And if we want to practice into, a longer timeline, then we have to think about what is the philosophy of keeping the healer healthy. And that's a huge responsibility that most people don't get a chance to bridge that conversation for themselves or for their colleagues is because it's a volume game. It's how many people can I see? How quickly can I race to 1,000 patient visits this week? And that
ends up in injury.
Yeah. That's a young man sport. That's ego.
When I was a young man, when I was in chiropractic school, Klum said, he got up on stage and I'm sure you've heard this story. He said there was a man and he was walking by some masons and he asked the first guy, well, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm building a wall. And he keeps walking, he goes across to the next guy and he says, well, what are you doing? I'm earning a living. What do you think I'm doing? And then he goes to a third guy. He says, well, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a cathedral. And I think for chiropractors, that is essential, because we get to learn our skill and our art and our technique. But if we don't have the big picture of what we are doing, we are just going through a technique and then we start thinking about other things rather than how do I heal this person in front of me? How do I best give my all to this person in front of me? And there's a lot of pressure, I think, for chiropractors, especially ones starting out because they're debt ceiling. Either they've got a lot of debt, I got to see more and more and more people. It's, you've got to love your patients, and you've got to do your best with them, and you've got to tell them when to come back. That's the key, because I feel kind of better. I guess I'm done. No, maybe you're not done. Maybe we just got you know, we got rid of some of your subocciput stuff, but you're collapsed here, and you're collapsed here because of, you haven't gotten the emotional awareness or whatever. You're not looking here to see how you can expand yourself as a human being. We are healers, and we have a broad license. We don't have to just go adjust in the back if the person's collapsed in here because they're afraid. We're not therapists either, but we can say, how can we support you so that you can feel like you can come out and be here in the world. And those are the kinds of things that are going to make your patients understand why they're coming. And so, yeah, when I was a young chiropractor, I read in Dynamic Chiropractor, there's a chiropractor, and he said, I've got cancer. I'm not around for much longer. This is what you need to do as a young chiropractor. And he said, love your patients, do your best, tell them when to come back. And when to come back depends on what the goals are, right?
Yeah, the more that you share with me, the more it starts to open up a conversation that goes deeper, because I tell people all the time, we don't want to guess with your health. We want to do a full exam, consultation, health history, neurological checks, orthopedic checks, muscle testing, x-rays. We want to make sure that we go ahead and do the analysis the right way.
Right.
And that's building the trust of relationship and earning that position to give that recommendation to say, keep coming back. But we have to give the analysis of getting that opportunity to build that relationship from like the day one. Like, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And that's something else about the profession is I've also heard we don't want to pop and pray, but there is prayer for ourselves to do good, like you said, and do your best each time. But it doesn't always have to be included into the adjustment. It can be the mindset of how you come into practice each day. It can be the awareness that you give your time to people, and that's your greatest gift that you can give to people. And that's a spiritual reverence and a spiritual realm that people come into a chiropractor. Like, the worst thing that I would always tell people is I don't want a chiropractor to adjust me that's got money problems. Like, if the first thing that they're thinking about is making money today, that's not a practice I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of a practice where somebody comes in, and if you want to use lack of a better expression, I want them zenned out. I want them at peace with the world. I want them at peace with their relationships. I want them at peace with their bank accounts. I want them at peace to when they're delivering their art to me. They're clear. They're an open vessel. They're a hollow bone. They go in and they know what they're doing, and they're not constrained by the outside world telling them that they have to see this many people today to make a living. So I think that the pop and pray method is what I've heard before. We have to also understand that there needs to be that internal reverence of prayer for ourselves that we're ready to go and recommend based on the strategy that we meet this person with on day one. And back to what you were saying earlier about the person that's building the cathedral, the way that I heard it was they went by and asked the man what he was doing today. And he said, I'm a bricklayer. Bug off. Don't bother me. I have a job to do. They asked the next guy what he was doing, and he said, well, my wife told me I had to go to work today and earn money, so this is the job that I got, and I don't realize what I'm really doing. I just know that I'm a part of a crew, and I have to go out here and serve and earn money. And then they asked the third person what they were out there doing, and he said, actually, I'm building the pathway to the kingdom for the future, and I'm building a road that's going to be able to bring people to and from, that are going to build prosperity for this village, and that are going to bring joy to the city and bring people to do trade here. And that's why I'm here today.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm doing this. It's not for the money. It's not because I'm just a technician or a bricklayer. I'm here because this is going to build the road to the future for more prosperity and more connection and more joy for the people that I'm a part of this community. So it all depends on the position that we tell ourselves what the truth is of why we do what we do. And I think that that's the bigger moment that I said that we're going to have a great episode today, because we got a chance to meet each other and talk through the troubles of the technology of the communication with the microphone and the transmission quality. So I think there's a lot more that goes into understanding this beautiful profession of chiropractic, and why people ask me all the time, Dr. Feldman, they say, do you ever get tired of having the same conversation over and over? I go, no, because I have to tell the story. I have to tell the big idea. I have to tell the message of chiropractic, because nobody else is going to do it like me. And
and you're curious about every chiropractor's take on this thing. And in that, I'm curious about what's going on inside this particular patient. I think we arrive, after maybe 5 to 10 years. At 5 years, we can say we have mastered our field. At 10 years, we're really a master, hopefully. And after that, what keeps a chiropractor going is the vision of what they're doing, how they're turning on the power inside people's bodies so that they can function optimally and they can be their optimal expression in this world. And the other is curiosity. I mean, if we think about Gonstead and Goodhart and Palmer, the DD and BJ, all the greats, Sweat, what were they doing? They were endlessly curious. And why should we be any different? It's a great thing to say, I follow the progenitor of this technique stuff to the letter. But it's an even greater thing is I'm following it to the letter, and I know that there's more to learn, and I know that there's more behind the curtain that I haven't seen yet. And so that's how I quite accidentally came up with tugging on the tendons or mobilizing the joint capsule while the subluxation was not in a state of alarm, to figure out how it just entered. I was standing on the shoulders of various people, but I was also going, well, what about that over there? What about that over there? And what about this inside the patient? And feeling what's going on inside the patient. It never gets boring. Never.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is brought to you by Peach State Payments, ethical processing, more profit, less stress. Chiro HD, more than an EHR, practice management simplified. The Chiro Speaking Company, attract, educate, and convert. Chiro Spring, cloud-based, user-friendly software with all the essential features chiropractors need. Rudman Relight, the IFCO, Chiro Moguls, Chiro Health USA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, and Life West College of Chiropractic. Let's hustle. Hey docs, let me ask you something. Are you adjusting patients but not adjusting your revenue? Because a lot of chiropractors are still undercharging without even realizing it. They're accepting insurance allowances that are just too low, and they're hesitant to raise the fees because they're worried about pushback from patients. The problem is, when your fees and financial systems aren't aligned, it creates a slow leak in your practice. And when you try to grow, more marketing, more patients, maybe even another location, the leak gets bigger. There's actually a smarter way to handle this. Chiro Health USA helps chiropractors charge appropriately when insurance is available, while still serving cash or limited benefit patients through a compliant discount medical plan. The results? Many practices see revenue increases around 15 to 20% without adding more visits. Same patients better margins, more freedom. If you want to stop leaving money on the table and build a practice that's both profitable and compliant, check out chirohealthusa.com to learn more. Well, you know, I don't get too much humor on this show typically, but that was a point that you were talking earlier about the dog. And one of the most, I guess, curiosity positions I ever get when I'm working out in the public is when somebody comes up to me and says, you know what? I'm so lucky I've never needed one of you guys.
Uh-huh.
And it triggers me right away to realize that we still have work to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
if that person were to get their atlas checked, or like you were saying earlier, people that don't breathe well, their T12 is subluxated.
Mm-hmm.
Like if people actually got a real chiropractic analysis and an adjustment,
Mm-hmm.
they would be so damn thankful, and they
Mhm.
would usher their children to the chiropractor, and they would tell their neighbors about chiropractic, and they would go and bring that chiropractor that took care of their atlas or their T12 gifts for Christmas and the New Year, and they would leave them Google reviews and Facebook reviews, and they would be a gospel for the message of chiropractic rather than, you know what, I'm glad I never needed you guys. And that just means that we have to do a better job of telling this story. And it was probably 13 years ago, Dr. Feldman, I was at this conference, and there was a guy named Joe Borio, and he was up on stage at this conference called Mile High Chiropractic. And it was in the infancy. Now it's like 13 years in the making, but it was year one. And I was still working in a chiropractic office, and I had no idea what I was about to transform into. And I felt like I was in this cocoon state of like reality. And I saw this guy on stage, Italian guy, foaming at the mouth, pretty much red in the face. And he was saying, we have to go tell the story. Like it's our job to go out there and be the vessels of communication and tell the story. And, you know, something tapped me on my shoulder. It might have been the hand of God. But I said, you know what? I think I have a job now. And I think it's my job to go tell the story.
Uh-huh.
And that coincides with what you're telling me is when you communicate this beautiful profession the way it needs to be disseminated, people understand it. And it's not just the people, it's the practitioner.
Right. Yeah, I embodied the story inside myself, and I didn't do like the lay lectures, that kind of stuff. But what I always did is I always got what the patients. I said, "What are your healthcare goals? What would you like to be doing?" Because everybody comes in for the most part in pain unless they already know chiropractic, and um, And so once they were out of pain and I did a reevaluation, I said, you're out of pain. If we want to stabilize it, we should do this and that. And then you have these other goals as well. So I can help you with those. I was on back in California, I was in a men's group, and a lot of these guys in the men's group were executive coaches. And I was walking along, and there were these two guys I didn't know, and they were having a conversation, and I just overheard them. And this one guy said to the other, I deal with venture capitalists. And you know what venture capitalists do? They put everything into one pile and they call that painkillers. And the other is things that are good for us, that help the planet and stuff. They call that vitamins. And they look at the two and they throw the vitamins away and they put their money in the painkillers because that's what people pay for. And I went, oh my God, I'm in exactly the right profession. Why? Because everybody comes and sees me because I'm a painkiller, but I'm also a vitamin. So it's my job to get them saying, okay, you've had your painkiller. Now, do you want the vitamin? And some people say, no, I only go see the mechanic when the muffler falls off. It's like, all right, that's your life. But other people will go, yeah, I really want to work on this and this and this, and now I want you to work with me on that. So I didn't get on a big soapbox, but on an individual level during the reevaluations, And while I was talking to people and explaining things, I would encourage people to get under maintenance care.
Well, it's one of those things that it's good advice for the chiropractic profession. And it's very honest, and it's good banter for us to have this conversation because students will listen to this show and
Mm-hmm.
they'll realize what their legacy needs to be, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
realize the message that might resonate with them. And that's really the big idea of this show is I want to create curiosity and conversations to where it might spark something that will change somebody's career for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And that's the real beauty about having access to these stories is they're evergreen podcast episodes that somebody can listen to in 20 years from now and still get the wisdom that we share today. And
Right.
maybe we're not here anymore, but they can still hear these echoes of a conversation that happened one day that told the
Right.
truth about this thing called chiropractic. And I think that that's the greatest thing about what we do here is it's not just talking about the things that are near and dear to my heart, but it's the things that resonate with you as a practitioner that's almost been in the game for 4 decades. It's what is the message today that you think matters the most to have while we have this time together. And that's the beautiful thing about having these open conversations and really no agenda other than capturing stories.
Yeah.
And telling the story is really the antithesis of the outcome. And if we have a good enough story, somebody will listen to this and say, you know what? That venture capitalist about the painkillers and the vitamins, that was really important for me to hear that. And I I also want to admire people that do use chiropractic for pain because they're not wrong.
No.
They're actually right.
Right.
And the ones that use it for maintenance, you know what? I admire them too because they're right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the person that doesn't want chiropractic, I admire them too because they're right. And that's the world that we live in is we can always be right, but is it the most effective idea that we have?
Exactly. Is it the most effective idea that we have? And I think that's for our profession. Um, I think telling the story, the chiropractic story, is really important. And the reason why we have philosophy is because it's something that we perceive as true, but science hasn't proven it yet, you know? And there are certain things that science can prove pretty quickly, given some research money, like how does a subluxation untangle itself? It is a scientific, we're at the point where we can work on that. So we should, money should be put into research. Some people think, oh, well, Canadian Memorial College are really science-based and not philosophy-based. No, there's no contradiction. Research can support philosophy. There is no contradiction. I'm a big fan of both. And the thing that I like about science is it's a way of staying curious, you know? And so the other people use science to say, well, science hasn't proven it yet, so it's not true. And that's not the case. No, that's where philosophy comes in. Philosophy is there saying we just see that this works. And so we're going to construct our best paradigm around it. And so I think both are going to be continually evolving together. Um, and um, I'm happy to see that, and I'm happy to play my little part in it, which is how do we figure out how to down-regulate a subluxation so that it will be more responsive and less traumatized, so it will go easier. Yeah.
Well, I think that that's a really responsible thing for us all to consider when it comes to where the profession's going. Because I did two documentaries, and one of them I interviewed this guy that was recovering from drugs, and I did closing remarks with him, and I said, "Hey, based on your, 6 months under care, and you not being a chiropractor,
Mm-hmm.
I said, where do you see the profession going in
Mm-hmm.
10 years?" And he goes, I got a secret for you. The profession will go wherever you take it.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, the profession will go however far your story goes. And that's the truth, is we have to be good stewards of this beautiful organic profession called chiropractic.
Right.
If not, people will parcel it off like they do anything else.
Right.
And they'll subcategorize it and they'll specialize it. And chiropractic is probably the most beautiful profession I've ever been a part of, because it can't be bought and it can't be sold. And what it can do is give the greatest gift to people in this world. It can release them from self bondage and pain. And so what? Some people want to use chiropractic as an expensive Advil. We just have to do a better job of explaining to them why lifetime care is important for them, and why care from first breath to last breath, from cradle to grave, from womb to tomb, is probably the most fundamental thing that they can do for quality of life. And it's not a cost, it's not an expense, it's actually an investment. And what we put our time into is what we get out of it. And I think that that's a great takeaway for people to understand, is we don't need people to do anything. We just need them to understand that if they're making a decision to come back, why that decision is a value add to them and not an expense.
Right. And let me add to that, that when people make a decision to come back, it's not that they're just coming back so that we get their C7 to go again. You know, it's so that we say your C7 continues to be an issue because you're still not listening to me about your ergonomics at the desk. You're still slouching at the desk, and I want you to do this, and I want you to, we have to be good parents. There is a certain section of our patients who will just be like, just do me. I love that feeling when I leave here, and I that gets tiresome it's good for the pocketbook for us, but that's not really being a doctor. That's being a technician. Doctor means being an educator. And it's really important for us to try to bring our patients along. Be where they're at. If they're in a state of, I'm in pain, get me out of pain, we focus there, and then we just move them forward a little bit at a time. And some of them will stay with us for a lifetime, and others won't, and that's okay. It's their responsibility, but it's our responsibility to be doctors, which means being educators as well as treaters. And I think the other thing is we need to keep using our hands. There are going to be more and more machines that are coming out that are going to do cool things. And I don't have any problem with spinal decompression or spring-loaded adjustments or anything like that. I just think that if we're going to carry this story of chiropractic forward, we're going to do it with our hands and our hearts more than we are with machines and gadgets.
Yeah. Well, you're in Mexico. I go to Mexico quite a bit too. You know what they don't do in Mexico? Therapies. You know why they don't do therapies in Mexico? Because they can still make money with their hands. And the reason why the paradigm shifted in North America outside of Latin America is because the adjustments stayed the same price for the past 40 or 50 years. And people feel like they have to supplement their income, and they add in these other therapies with spring load and decompression because they can charge more for it. So if we really want to get back to brass tacks of the beautiful profession of chiropractic, we should go explore what they're doing down there in Mexico and see how chiropractors are coming out of chiropractic college in their mid-20s with no student loan debt, and they can open up and throw their shingle up and be successful just with their hands producing chiropractic adjustments. So if we want to figure out what's going on with the healing art of the profession and why the future doesn't belong in the gadget, it belongs in the hands, it's because we have to reevaluate the valuation of a chiropractic education and what that means for somebody to have to add therapies into their practice instead of just going and showing up and finding it, fixing it, leaving it alone.
Right. Chiropractic school is free in Mexico. There are I forget whether it's 2 or 3 schools, but they're state universities. And
Yeah.
you get the GPA and you get into chiropractic school. It's a free ride.
And they come in right after high school. There's no prerequisite crap with an undergrad. You come right in, guns blazing, come out at 23, able to go out there and serve your community with more vitality than somebody in their mid 30s strapped to $250,000 in debt. So we have to reframe the mindset of what it means to be a chiropractor too. And if anybody makes it to minute 46 of this podcast, they're going to hear the real truth of where we need to take this profession, because the profession isn't done by just one person proctoring an idea and passing a board. No, it's done by who is the most qualified person, not to add more to this chiropractic profession, but just to keep it pure and to do right by the community. And doing the one thing that nobody else can do is the chiropractic adjustment. If we stick to that, the profession has the most beautiful existence. If we cobble it up with all these other therapies and all these other zing and zangs, then the profession will definitely get left on the side of the road for the mechanical and the springs.
I feel like, yeah, a good solid adjustment is the cornerstone to all those things. And so chiropractors are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to do nutrition. They're going to do supplements. They're going to do, so I don't have a problem with that either. I think our job is to support the human frame, so, you know, uh, but the central core thing that we do is help the innate intelligence function optimally in our bodies. And the way that we do that is by making sure that the channels are clear. And on top of that, whatever floats your boat. I mean, I think that chiropractors need to be decent physical trainers. We need to be decent nutritionists. We need to be, these things and all. And that's not mixing. That is doing our duty to support the human frame. You either do that yourself, or you get somebody in your office to do it, or you refer them out. I mean, it's fine to be a straight chiropractor and just do adjusting if that's all you want to do. But there's going to be a point where that person's going to need to know how to get on a gym ball, or how to get their rocks off in a Taekwondo class or a Zumba class. It's our job to fill the big picture for them.
And I'm nowhere in this conversation with you down regulating the practitioner. I'm just saying we have to make our main thing the main thing. Mm-hmm. And Absolutely. if not, we'll lose our way, and people will just treat chiropractors like physical therapists, and they'll forget why chiropractic is so amazing, because it's the adjustment. Right. And if we ever put the adjustment on the shelf and we focus on lasers and the other things, which I'm in favor of lasers. I'm in favor of decompression. I'm in favor of shockwave. I'm in favor of nutrition. I'm in favor of vitamins. But if we don't make our main thing the main thing, then it gets diluted, and the public perception of chiropractic is they just do those things, and the profession will get watered down. That's all.
Right.
I woke up this morning to a message from a practitioner. And I know we're up on, almost 50 minutes. So I want to get closing remarks from you and anything that I didn't ask you that we can close out with. But he said, James, Lynn here. I just wanted to tell you that I listen to the podcast as I drive to Life West in Bellevue, Nebraska to teach on Tuesdays. You're doing God's hard work for the profession. Keep it up.
Nice.
And that came through at 7:32 this morning. And I said, Lynn, I got to tell you, brother, that means the world to me. Not every day is an easy day, but this made my morning better. Thank you for sharing. And it's those things that keep me going with the conviction that I have to stand here or sit here with you and have this conversation, because we all have to have purpose. And some people find purpose by becoming a doctor, and some people find purpose by having conversations with doctors. So I'm thankful that I could find purpose today with you and have an open conversation about things, and all things that we love. BJ Palmer would always say, I love you because you love the things I love. And I think that that's a critical moment, that we have to figure out that we're more alike than we're different. And that if we find that commonality, then our likeness can help more people. So I appreciate you finding value in the conversation today, but I do want to give you the opportunity at the end of today's conversation. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you were hoping that we get a chance to talk about?
I think we covered it all. I'm just anxious to share what my discoveries with the chiropractic profession. I feel like philosophically, if we do heroics and we do it well, but if we can take a step back and we say, okay, rather than be the lawyer that says, all right, I know exactly what's wrong here, I'm going to do it, we become the mediator to the body and say, oh, are you feeling out of sorts here? Let's make you feel comfortable so you can help figure it out philosophically. And I might be just making it up just because that's how I raised my kids. I didn't say, clean your room or else. I said, let's make a game out of it. Let's try to make it fun. If we can take this listening attitude to the body and sort of be the mediator and say, is this how you're feeling? Okay, well, let's try to make you comfortable. Then the body will untangle itself the way nature knows how to do. Subluxations weren't invented with chiropractic. They were there for 300 million years before chiropractic. And nature had its way, which had to do with putting the body into comfort, So we can combine the best of both worlds. And I do have courses that are for California. There's four CEUs offered, one free one for anybody to take on sort of the whole scientific basis of it. It's called Adjust Smarter, Not Harder. And the other one is on the cervicals. I'm going to get the ones for the thoracics and lumbars and pelvis down the road, but for the cervicals, which is pretty important, you can go to theinjuryfreedc.com or my name, ethanfeldmandc.com. It just gets you all to the same place.
Well, I appreciate you making time with me today. And I just want to reiterate, go to the injuryfreedc.com or ethanfeldmandc.com and check out his work and see how he can help you with your career and have longevity, because really that's what it matters to be a practitioner, is to be able to stay in the game. And
it's a huge commitment and it's a very enlivening field. Every day I used to feel great leaving going, I made so many people feel better. How many other professions can do that? And we want to do it for a good long while. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Feldman, you're episode 772 of the Chiro Hustle Podcast. I appreciate you being our guest today.
Thank you for allowing me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
okay. And you come visit me in Mexico. If you go to Bucerias in Puerto Vallarta, it's not that far.
Well, I come to Mexico City often too, so
it's even closer.
We'll figure out how to make that happen. But I close out like I always do, and I tell people, you guys are just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys on next episode. Bye for now. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.